जय जय श्री राधे। श्री वल्लभाधीश की जय हो, श्री गिरिराज धरन की जय हो, सब वैष्णवन को जय श्री कृष्ण. Today is the 17th offering, and we are commencing with part 4 of the Varta of Seth Purushottam Dasji. One day, when Seth Purushottam Das was sitting in his temple sewing some cloth for the Lord, his son was watching him from afar and thought, "My father is getting old now, so I will probably have to take over the Seva." Thinking thus, he went and bathed. Sethji read his mind and called him over. "Oh, my son," he said, "come over here." When Gopal Das got closer to his father, he saw that he was as he was when he was 25 to 30 years old. Sethji told him, "A faithful Vaishnava is always at the prime of his life. At the same time, one should act accordingly to one's present age. Please don't ever think like that again about me." Gopal Das thought that he was much younger than his father, and so he would be needed to take over the Seva. That in itself was a mistake, because Seva is granted by Sri Thakurji's grace alone, and not as a matter of course. It makes no odds whether one is young or old. Sethji told him never to think like that again, and in saying this he was able to teach Gopal Das a good lesson. In the Leela, Gopal Das is Sethji's Sakhi. Thus if Sethji did not set him straight, then who would? Part 5. One day Seth Purushottam Das travelled to the south. There, in a place called Jharkhand, is a mountain named Mandara, on top of which lived the Lord in the form known as Mandara Madhusudan. If a person were to accidentally fall off that mountain, they would not sustain injury, and if they were to purposely throw themselves off, then they would surely die. But their heart's desire would be granted in their next life. This is how the mountain was popularly known. Sri Acharyaji had visited this place on his Holy Grace pilgrimage. Now Seth Purushottam Das came there together with one renounced Brahmin. Whilst they were looking around, night fell, and so they took rest there itself. In the middle of the night, Sri Thakurji came there disguised as an accomplished Brahmin. Sethji did not say anything, but the Vaishnava who was with him said, "Who are you?" The Lord said, "I am a Brahmin who lives on this mountain. Who are you?" The Vaishnava replied, "We are disciples of Sri Vallabhacharyaji." The disguised Lord then said, "I have a jewel. Would you like to have it?" The Vaishnava asked him what was special about that jewel. The Lord in the form of the Brahmin said that the jewel would grant as much wealth as they could ever want. The renounced Vaishnava Brahmin told him, "What will I do with such a jewel? The Lord gives me flour that I need to cook with, and I don't need anything else. But Sethji has a family. Maybe you should give it to him." The disguised Lord told him to wake Sethji up. After waking Sethji up, his companion told him to take the jewel, which would give him all the wealth he could ever have or could ever need. Seth Purushottam Das replied, "I don't need any jewel." The Lord is in the form of the Brahmin, took the jewel and walked away. The Vaishnava asked Sethji why he had not accepted the gift of the jewel. Sethji asked the same question back to him. "It was offered to you first before me." The Vaishnava explained, "I am a renounced Brahmin, so what would I do with such a jewel? The Lord provides me with a kilo of flour for the food I need." Sethji replied, "If he gives you a kilo, he gives me 10. The Lord is in no way deficient, and therefore, you crazy Brahmin, why would I leave the shelter of Sri Thakurji and put my faith in a jewel?" Sethji soon returned home. Bhav Prakash, the inner meaning. One question arises here. Why did Sethji even leave home to travel to the south? He was completely satisfied in his life, so why did he need to go to see that Lord Madhusudan? Sethji's first motivation had been that Sri Acharyaji took birth in the south, and so he would like to visit that place. However, Sri Mandara Madhusudanji called him to come to his mountain to purify it. Many sinful people were always visiting the mountain. They heard the legend of the place and then jumped off the mountain. All their sins were conglomerated there. The Lord explained, "All pilgrimage places crave for the arrival of pure souls and accomplished devotees. Please come here and purify the area. If you come, the place will also become more well known. I assure you, will not lose your bhava and neither your full faith and shelter in the Lord. Hearing this plea, Sethji went to that place, but the Lord tempted him with the wish-granting jewel, but Sethji had no desire for it because he was free from any other desire than for Seva. Sethji had thus nothing to fear. He was totally qualified to purify the place, and this would not obstruct his Seva. For those who have a particular desire in their mind and heart when they go to a holy place, then that is an obstruction to the devotional life. They could fall off the mountain and even fully get their desired reward, but any single desire other than Seva will be paid for with the loss of their status in the path of grace, and they would fall from grace. Sethji and his companion had not asked for the jewel, but if they had accepted, even so, it would still be an obstruction to devotional service because they would have established some kind of mental relationship with it, some pull of the heart, and that constitutes anyashray, or taking refuge anywhere other than the path of grace. Sethji had also called the Brahmin crazy, because really he should not even have spoken at all when the jewel was offered to him, and even if it had been any other reward, it would have been better not to even enter into a conversation about it, but to just have walked away, as Sethji did. Sethji's firm faith can be understood through this incident. Part 6. At one time, Sri Acharyaji went to Varanasi. He stayed at Seth Purushottam Das's house. Sri Acharyaji bathed Sethji's 3 Thakurji with the 5 nectars, prepared foodstuffs, offered them, and afterwards took prasad. Damodar Das Harsani asked Sri Acharyaji why he had performed this purificatory bathing of Sri Madan Mohanji, Sethji's Sri Thakurji. Sri Acharyaji replied that even though Sethji was allowed to initiate people with the Lord's name by his wish, there was still some purification that needed to occur. Bhav Prakash. When a guru initiates anyone and makes them his disciple, then their sins transfer to him. The guru has to be capable of burning off these sins. Sri Acharyaji is explaining that, although Sethji was initiating people through his instructions and was a great devotee, still he might not be able to consume the sins. So therefore Sri Acharyaji bathed Sethji's Sri Thakurji with the 5 nectars in order to purify the 5 elements of which Sethji's body consisted. This is one meaning, and for this act, but it is inferior. The superior meaning is that because Sethji worshipped his Sri Thakurji with the sentiment that he was Sri Acharyaji had to perform his 5 nectar bath so that the 3 Thakurji became for him Sri Krishna, who upheld the Sri Giriraj mountain, and only then was he able to make the offerings to the Lord. Part 7. Another time, the king of Varanasi decided that he would like to meet with Seth Purushottam Das ji. The king lived on the far banks of the Ganga river. Part 7. Another time, the king of Varanasi decided that he would like to meet with Seth Purushottam Das ji. The king lived on the far bank of the Ganga river. Early in the morning he came over from there. At that time Sethji was wearing a very small cloth and he was picking up cow dung. Someone told him that the king was on his way. They told him to wear something nice and sit in his chair. Sethji said, "Let him come. I'm not afraid of a king." The king arrived and Sethji approached him with his hands covered in cow dung. The king was not stupid, and he said, "O Sethji, well done. You are praiseworthy, for you have given up care for fame and name in this world." Sethji replied that a householder's duty is to do housework. The king went back home in a happy mood. This shows that Sethji didn't care what others thought of him. Looking after the cows was an important part of the housework. This story reveals how Sri Thakurji's Seva should also comprise Seva to cows. These duties are related to the home when it is dedicated to Seva. Worldly and scriptural duties are for outside work, but not related to Seva and for others to see. Part 8. Sethji always continued with his loving Seva. Then came the Janmashtami festival to celebrate Sri Krishna's appearance day. The next day he set up a cradle in the mood of Nanda Babaji's home. Nandaraji, Yashodaji, and the gopis and Gwal came there to celebrate. It was an indescribable, bliss-filled festival. Sethji, his son, and his daughter all had their holy site, Bhav Prakash. All three of them were related to the eternal Leela and therefore qualified to witness this scene. Part 8 continued. After this occurrence, Sri Acharyaji told Yashodaji with the gopis and Gwal that it was not really appropriate for them to appear directly in this day and age. They replied that when Sri Acharyaji, who is the form of Sri Swaminiji, celebrates such a festival, then it is impossible for them to stay away. Sri Acharyaji then said, "From now on we will dress up to be you. You can be present in the garments." They agreed, and so from that day on, this was the way that Sethji celebrated the birthday of Sri Krishna. Sethji also always let Sri Madan Mohanji swing in his cradle. Sethji loved this festival so much. So, thus concludes the 17th reading, and tomorrow we will continue with the story of Seth Purushottam Das. Aaj ke Anand ki jai ho ji. Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Shri Vallabhadhish ki Jai. Jai Shri Krishna.